Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly Spinner Rack. I'm your host, Chris. Man, if this is the only weekly Spinner Rack you tune into this year, this is the right one to do it. Folks, I have so many interesting news topics for us all to riff on. And there were a number of interesting books that came out this week. Spider-Man, Superman, pretty big book from Marvel and DC, of course. The debut of Corpse Night through Image and Skybound. I've got a lot to say about this. And the return of a personal favorite of mine, Head Lopper. Just a ton of great stuff. We've got an audience filtering in here. Tell you what, let me throw on a few things here. I'm going to throw on a little ticker there so that if you're joining or you dip in or out, you can figure out where we are because there's a lot of topics. I consider this like my ESPN news banner thing that they do on like Sports Center. Something like that. But tell you what, it has been a big week for news. So what I'd like to do is get started with the beloved, everybody loves this, opening monologue. Here we go. Okay, ready? Okay, sure. That sound effect works. So, this is all based on real news. Marvel announced that they would be returning to Hall H for this year's Comic-Con. That's, of course, the most popular panel to get into. So, of course, folks are known to camp out, to get early, to get in there. I almost delivered that right. You get what I'm saying. But yeah. Folks camp out very early to get into Hall H. Marvel's returning. Yeah, one fan in line told a reporter, I can't wait to finally hear what Marvel plans to do with Lou Ferrigno in the Hulk. Okay. He'd been waiting a while. That's the joke. I won't do too many of these. Just going to let people filter in, get you warmed up. This is just the intro period, okay? Anyway, Sony is reportedly making a movie based on the comic books that crossed over Zorro with Django from the Quentin Tarantino movie Django Unchained. That's true. That isn't the joke part. That's actually true. Tarantino gave his blessing to use Django under the conditions that A, they stay true to his character, and B, that we get to see the character's feet. It's kind of his thing. I like feet. I'm Quentin Tarantino. I like feet. Let's not shame anybody. I'll wrap things up. Finally, fans online have been posting a lot on all sorts of social media. I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Reddit. Yeah, I go on Reddit. I'm young. I'm hip. But fans are starting to worry that the comics industry is heading back to its 1990s speculation bubble era. Variant covers, gimmicks, reboots. One fan said Marvel learned the wrong lessons from the 90s. Marvel replied saying, that's ridiculous. We definitely learned our lesson. We now use cardstock paper on all of our shiny variant covers. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. Oh, folks, do we have a show for you? And by we, I mean me. There's one person here making this whole show. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. Look at that. Thank you. I come bringing sugar-free Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Is this too bright? Let me just dim that a little. I think that's a little better. I look more like a normal person as compared to the bleached out ghost you typically get to see, right? A little better, mildly. All right. Tell you what, I think it would be a lot of fun to get started with the news of the week. And since this is my show, I think I'll declare that that's what we'll do.
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi, guys. This is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
Okay, here we go. Just throwing in Logan Paul there for the clicks, because all those Logang people are going to tune in and go, I wonder what this nerd has to say about Logan. We'll get there. There's other stuff to talk about first, to be honest. In fact, let me acknowledge this. Yes, a moment of silence for the great Gerry Conway. In fact, that's what I'm going to talk about first. So, this happened today. And I think a lot of us are feeling different emotions. If I'm just announcing this to you for the first time, I don't enjoy being the bearer of sad news. But writer Gerry Conway, he passed away at the age of 73. I wish he'd had a lot more time with us. Very prolific, though. Let me tell you about some of the things that make Gerry Conway special. Just some. Obviously an influential writer in comics. I think the fact that he wrote The Death of Gwen Stacy is probably what he's going to be best remembered for, probably, but he wrote a lot, so who knows? And, that is generally considered the beginning of the Bronze Age of comics. Obviously, plot lines are getting a little more serious, a little darker. And I think that was a pretty key moment in comics, the night Gwen Stacy died. But that wasn't, of course, the only thing he did in comics. What else? He's the co-creator of a lot of characters that you know. Punisher, Power Girl, Firestorm, the first Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers becoming Ms. Marvel, Jason Todd, Killer Croc, Man-Thing, Werewolf by Night, Vixen, Ben Reilly, Jackal, Tombstone. So many characters. It's absolutely amazing. And, I think he's always felt a little bit bittersweet about some of that because he wrote all of these really influential things, but he never really collected tons of royalties by his own admission. Marvel wasn't like, here, have some money because we're using it in another movie. And, he was very vocal about how much he did not approve of police using the Punisher logo. He was like, boy, are they getting the wrong idea? This guy was not a superhero. So he was a good egg. What else did he do? He transitioned. He didn't give up comics, but he did transition into writing a lot of animated series thanks to his connections. Started by doing, G.I. Joe, Transformers, I think even My Little Pony. So like the Hasbro stuff that Marvel did the animation for. Did a lot of that stuff, though. And from there, even got into live action TV, things like Law and Order and Law and Order Criminal Intent. He wrote episodes of real TV. Wrote movies, just a few. Conan the Destroyer. Let's try not to hold that against him too much. But also the fairly influential film Fire and Ice. Ralph Bakshi, Frank Frazetta, Gerry Conway, and Roy Thomas were the guys that were writing that. He did a lot of stuff that he co-wrote with Roy Thomas. Yeah. And you are correct, Circuitron. He broke into comics, folks, at just the age of 16. Can you believe that? 16 years old, he sold a story to DC Comics and was published in House of Secrets issue 18. Very cool. Arguably just as cool and maybe even more impressive, he wrote a novel, a legit novel that was published at age 18. So this guy worked hard. He wrote a lot of comics, a lot of TV novels. He was one of Marvel's editor-in-chiefs, kind of briefly, but he was. And he wrote the first intercompany crossover between Marvel and DC, Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man, which I would argue is now that we've got 3 Superman Spider-Man crossovers, the first is still the best. Just my opinion. But while the stuff that DC and Marvel have done in the last 2 years for the 40th anniversary or whatever, Wait, would it be 40 or would it actually be 50 years? I think it might actually be 50-year anniversary, right? I forget all of a sudden what year the original crossover came out. Anyway, the stuff that Marvel and DC is fun, but his story is much more iconic. So, great guy. It has not been announced how he passed away. I think a lot of people, are speculating because he had pancreatic cancer at one point, and in 2020, I am having the hardest time with my light blowing me out tonight. Anyway, he said that he was cancer-free in 2023, but that stuff can come back. So I don't know, unfortunately. I don't know. He was going to conventions relatively recently. I don't know what the last one specifically was that he attended, but, he's still been public. He's been posting online. So whatever happened, I think happened kind of fast. Yeah, that sounds right. So that would be 50 years, not 40. Geez, bad math on my part. Anyway, if you haven't read anything by Gerry Duggan, if you haven't read anything by Gerry Duggan, do read stuff by Gerry Duggan. He's actually really good. But I was here to talk about Gerry Conway, and definitely recommend his Spider-Man era. I think it's among the strongest eras of Amazing Spider-Man, and just a creative powerhouse. Wrote a lot of good stuff at DC with Firestorm, did some good Batman stuff. Anyway, just wanted to give kudos to a really important creator. Really, really important. All right. We'll continue, though. Some of this stuff will even be fun, believe it or not. I've got some DCU news. News? They both work. So, writer-director James Gunn shared a set photo from the Man of Tomorrow film to his Instagram. It includes some clever hints about the movie. If you look very closely at how this board is laid out, this is not just a random chessboard, folks. Ame kohi o tsukurimashita. Kohi o nomimashou. Yatai. All right. It's more than just a checkmate, Mike. It's really, really cool. This chessboard is laid out to mimic the famous Game 6 of the computer AI Deep Blue versus Garry Kasparov. That was a rematch that they had in 1997, and that was the first time a computer beat a reigning chess champion. Obviously, that would make it a clever reference of sorts to the fact that Brainiac, a living computer, is the villain of this piece. So I thought that was incredibly clever to refer to that. To refer to something real world and let fans just figure it out, which was great. Cinema Blend had an article where they pointed out that Superman was invited to play chess when he visited Luthor in prison fairly recently, 2021's Superman Son of Kal-El annual #1. And in that, Superman asks Lex, hey, have you ever considered the good that we could do if, we worked together, if we collaborated? And Lex admits, he has considered that. So who knows if that exact moment would be included in the film, but could be. Yeah, Gunn just, I think today, in fact, said that they haven't quite cracked, not necessarily how to make a good authority film, but to have it integrate itself in an organic way into their shared universe, which I sort of get because the authority is pretty dark. It wasn't originally intended to be part of a shared superhero universe. Well, at least not the DC superhero universe. So, I could understand it being a tough nut to crack. I really could. Maybe that's all they have in prison, but yeah. Hey, Brainiac, stop all that chest downloading. It's a reference. References are funny. Family Guy taught me that. Let's see. What else? Warner Brothers also this week released the first Clayface trailer. Really more of a teaser, I should say. It shows that Clayface is Matt Hagen, but he's an actor. In the comics, there are several Clayfaces, if you don't know. The original Clayface was an actor who didn't have, like, powers. He just called himself Clayface. You know, he had a mask. He was a murderer. And then the second Clayface that Batman went up against was a sort of a treasure seeker guy, Matt Hagen, who was diving. He came across, like, you know, a buried treasure while he was scuba diving. And he basically touched radioactive mud that turned him into a shapeshifter. And I think that those are the two most famous versions of Clayface. But yeah, the look and the story behind it have got some of us thinking that maybe this isn't the same Clayface that we saw already in the DCU in Creature Commandos. There was a shapeshifter Clayface in Creature Commandos, but it's possible that there's more than one Clayface in the DCU, just like in the comic books. I vaguely remember it. Absolutely a reference to that. Absolutely. Basil Karloff is definitely meant to evoke the name Boris Karloff, especially considering Golden Age era villain. Visually, I don't know if you've seen it. I won't spoil it, I guess, if you haven't seen it, but I will point out that there are a lot of echoes of certain things. Certainly, there's a bunch of references to horror movies. I think that the fact that the main character is seen all bandaged reminded me first of Eyes Without a Face. Not just a great Billy Idol song, also a pretty famous black and white thriller movie. But you could even say that, like, that look and has continued to more modern movies like Goodnight Mommy. But there's also visual cues that reflect stuff from Clayface One Bad Day. That's a fairly recent origin comic that has him sort of kind of melting him a little bit in a bathtub. I think that was probably intentional. I think there's also some visual and story beats taken from Feet of Clay, F-E-A-T, Feet of Clay, the Batman the Animated Series 2-part, famously animated by a Japanese animation studio. I want to say it was Madhouse. Probably the single best animated episode of Batman the Animated Series. Really, really incredible. Great sort of thing where it focuses on an actor who gets the shape-shifting powers. So I think that, like, that TV show episode, or really 2-part episode, is more what inspired this movie than a specific comic. But that's just a guess. Oh yeah, I think that the substance or any sort of there's a sort of a subgenre of horror movies, body melting horror, where you've got the substance, the stuff, the blob, movies where people, like, sort of melt. And I think that Clayface is kind of going for that. Yes, TMS animated it. Exactly. Thank you. They were also the studio that did the adaptation of the European comic Cyber Six. I made an episode on comic tropes about it. Ron Perlman, great voice actor. Street Trash. Yeah, that's another melting movie. Exactly right. It's sort of, I think that you could probably dig into, especially like in the 80s, a lot of trashy melting movies. I'm sure someday Jim Mafood and I will cover some sort of a melting movie on Trash Movie Bonanza. It just feels inevitable. Cyber 6 has a really interesting history, and I'm really proud of that episode. It's very lightly seen because not that many people know about either the comic or the TV show, but Cyber 6 is really interesting. Cyber 6, I believe, was Argentinian. You're right. It was not European. I think what I was confused is I think it was also reprinted in France, and even Canada got some of those French reprints. That's what I was thinking of. I haven't thought of it in a long time. Anyway. Yeah, Street Trash could be cool. It would be interesting. Dude, isn't that a really interesting episode of Red Letter Media? With what was it? Joshua. Oh, he's a really funny comedian and voice actor. I forget. One of their friends guests and has some really heartfelt stuff to say about Street Trash. Josh Robert Thompson. Thank you, Circuitron. Really funny guy. Great episode of Red Letter Media. One of the better ones. Like emotionally, but funny too. Josh Robert Thompson. Really, really funny, especially on Red Letter Media. Dude, I Melt With You. I used to just think of it as a movie warning about a little bit like nuclear war and stuff, but it was like melt, like your heart melts for somebody. And then you listen to the lyrics, and I Melt With You by Modern English is literally about people melting together from nuclear bombs going off. Crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, there's tons to talk about, so I'll keep going. Jim Lee posted an update to his social media this week on Batman Hush 2, which is 9 months late from when it was originally solicited. And if you talk about when it was originally planned, it's something closer to like 16 months when they originally announced that they would be doing this project. But then there was like a delay before it got started. So I'll cut them a little bit of slack there. I like Todd in the Shadows. I'll have to find that. That's really cool. It's a good song too. Making love to me was never seventh best. Anyway, so Hush is 9 months late for its finale. But Jim Lee posted that his part of the work is done. It's on to the inkers and colorists and letterers, and that issue 163 will come out on May 27th. Okay. Why was it delayed so much? Well, Jim shared that he was reluctant to share his personal health information, but he revealed that he was actually diagnosed as pre-diabetic, which is, just to be clear, very close to actually being diabetic, because I went straight to basically being diabetic. It's brutal. This happened last summer, and it slowed him down. It slowed me down on my show. Literally, I used to do comic tropes for like about 6 years straight. Every Sunday I released an episode. And I wanted to do, I became more of a perfectionist, and I wanted to do like a more edited show. But the thing that really slowed me down was I'd been constantly just drinking Mountain Dew, staying up to like 2, 3 a.m. multiple nights in a row to get my episodes done. Too much sugar, bad choice. As soon as I became diabetic, I just slowed right down. I just couldn't keep up. Hush 2 will definitely come out before GTA 6 at this point. Anyway, he specifically wrote, this is Jim Lee, the biggest adjustment has been losing the fifth gear I used to rely on, the 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. grind that powered books like Justice League and Suicide Squad. Now I cap drawing at 1 a.m. and force myself to work during the day on weekends. But those hours are only 25 to 40% as productive as my old late night form. He's saying he used to basically put in his 40-hour work week, and then he'd feel like he'd have 6 hours of quiet time to himself every night that he just did. But he can't do that anymore. And to be honest, being pre-diabetic is one thing, but also getting older is going to do something to you. I would also bet money on Hush 2. I don't think, to be clear, I don't think George R.R. Martin will ever finish Winds of Winter. As somebody that's been reading the books since before the show, I really don't think he'll ever finish them. And he said he won't allow anybody else to finish them for him. I just don't believe it. I can definitely believe that Jim Lee used to do that. I think a lot of comic book artists do that, to be honest. I think it is a young man's game to break in, and that a lot of people, it's not like you get rich that quickly, if ever, in comics. I think a lot of people have a day job and sort of grind extra hours, which is not good. Definitely check it, man. Definitely check it. It's a very simple lab work to get done. Diabetic makes you feel tired. Beyond being diabetic, I also have I forget the actual name for mono. There's like the Epstein-Barr virus. Once you have the Epstein-Barr virus, you are literally always tired. So having things like depression, Epstein-Barr virus, being technically diabetic, even if it's under control, these things mean that I am always ready to just fall asleep. And you can't really tell, like, am I exhausted because I've done a lot today or something and I just need the sleep? Or is it like that I feel like this and I can power through? It is tough. It is tough. I agree. I feel like once it's quiet like that and there's no distractions, I feel like I'm so productive during those hours, but it's not healthy and it's tough as you get older, if you get a family. Anyway. Chuck, one of the comics I read this week is one that you originally introduced me to. That's my friend Chuck, and I don't know if you remember, but you introduced me to Head Lopper back in the day, and a new Head Lopper came out this week. Anyway. All right, I'm going to keep going, though. This is a fascinating little story. So George Pratt. George Pratt is a painter, an illustrator, and he has made comics. Actually, he's made comics for a long time. Enemy Ace War Idol was back in 1990. Wolverine Netsuki was pretty acclaimed. That was 2002. He's definitely done comics as well as painted work for himself. Anyway, he just had a successfully crowdfunded book, Into White is what it was called, that has fallen completely apart in this last month. Literally, it went from like positive updates of about to go to the printer to it's not happening. It's crazy. So both George Pratt and publisher Joel Meadows, who's also the publisher of the online UK magazine Tripwire, it's about comics. Anyway, they've accused each other of misappropriating the funds from the project. It got so ugly so fast. I have no idea how it all fell apart this fast. This past week, Meadows posted to Kickstarter an update saying that the project is canceled. As part of his explanation, he wrote, "So George Pratt has canceled the book, and we are trying to arrange a refund schedule for everyone. However, George Pratt is now in possession of $20,000, and it is unclear how those funds will be used to issue refunds towards all the pledges on this campaign." Okay, that's one side of things. Here's the other. Pratt doesn't have access to the Kickstarter, but he emailed all the supporters. In part, he said this. He was telling a whole story, blah, blah, blah. "That's when Joel told me there was only $20,000 left of the money he raised through the Kickstarter. He had spent all the other money on, quote, personal expenses, $30,000. What? Meadows argues Pratt expanded the page count and dropped a paperback version, sort of unilaterally did that. And Pratt says that Meadows spent the money on other stuff. So I feel terrible for people who back this project because I don't really know what to make sense of. All I can say is it really does not seem likely that this is going to happen. And I don't know how people are expected to get their money back because each side is saying that the other is in control of, you know, somewhere between maybe 2/5 to 3/5 of the funds. Just wild. It really does make you just consider that crowdfunding is a fantastic tool these days for comic book artists. And I have had some really wonderful comics that I have supported and happily gotten, and 2 or 3 that haven't. I recently added up all the Kickstarters I've ever backed, And the amount of them that I backed, that I got stuff on, was somewhere around 95%. So I would consider that very lucky. About 5% of what I backed just hasn't been fulfilled. Maybe one or two of them still might, but yeah. I just don't know what happened here. I really don't know that name. Sorry. No, I don't know anything about that name. I don't know. That's so vague. Personal expenses. I wish that there was some more details there. But either way, my sympathies to backers at this point, and I hope that there's some clarity here. Hey, Jim, always good to see you, bud. I've known George for a while, and he's a genius and a damn good guy. This is a weird situation. It's terrible. I feel bad for everyone involved, because literally the beginning of this month, they were still posting positive updates. They were showing, like pre-press art pages, giving details on schedules, and talking about, the fulfillment. And then at the last minute, this seems to happen. It doesn't really make sense to me. Just sort of spreading the word so that you can be aware. I would still gladly back crowdfunded comics and art books, but you should definitely know at least a little something, I think, about the people that are working on it. Do your own research. This isn't abnormal. I was just surprised at the numbers here. So this past weekend was the Lake Como Comic Arts Festival. God, I'd love to go there. It looks like one of the most beautiful places on the planet. I know Jim was at, I want to say the 2024 one. Maybe it was 2024, right, Jim? Anyway, looks like a really amazing event that focuses on the artwork, like original art. I guess in some ways kind of similar to the Original Art Expo in that regard, which is also a pretty new event. Anyway, some fans were upset that the event auctions off spots in line that allow you to then buy a commission, but it is not buying the commission itself. So this year, there were bids for people like Gabriel Delato, as well as Frank Quitely, that hit $2,000 or more. And some people think that that prices out the average fan. I can sort of 2023. My apologies. 2023. Cool. I'm jealous, man. It looked amazing, the pictures and stuff you shared. To be clear, again, that is the price to get a priority slot to then request a commission, which you would pay to the artist. But this thing is to bid on the ability to get a priority spot in line, and that money goes to the convention organizers. It's getting close to doubling the cost of what you would pay for a commission. But it's also for some very in-demand artists. So, yeah. This is a convention specifically to buy original art from really well-known, established, successful artists that have, a big following. And they've had the ability to buy priority slots since 2024. Since 2024, it's just that it's gone up. Because I think last year the prices on the high end were something like $500 to $1,000, and then this year they were going over $2,000. So it just sort of goes to show how in demand some artists are. But when they say that it's pricing out the average fan, I would not say that the average fan can easily afford. I wish that this light would stop blowing me out tonight. The average fan isn't paying to go to this specific convention. So I wanted to share it, but I do think it's a little weird to complain about personally. The slot fee goes to the convention. The artist can just charge whatever they want for their commissions. So this goes to the convention organizers, and it's a way to control lines and demand. It's part of the game. But it's also not like, I don't know. This is catering to a higher end clientele by both who they bring and where they've set it. And I think that we have to acknowledge that. I wish it was less, but there are different conventions where you can just have the benefit of you're willing to wait in line, and if you're willing to wait in line longer than the next guy, that gives you the priority. It's a different convention. But anyway, I wanted to show it. All right. I'm going to talk about Logan Paul. One of my least favorite things to talk about, to be honest. I think he's a piece of shit. And I don't say that just because it's like, oh, I don't like his content. I think as a person, he fleeces his fans. I don't trust him. From what I've seen and read, I would not buy into any of his weird projects. Okay? But that's me. But then he's sort of getting involved in comics, so I'm going to talk about it a little. This past week, he was all over social media because he was proud to show off that he purchased 2 issues of Weekly Shonen Jump from the past. Now, they were graded by Beckett, and that's not typical for manga. Manga does not have the same level of collectability that American comics do. And if you've been to Japan, you might know that. There are definitely manga that can go for a lot, but it isn't treated the same. First of all, the weekly magazine anthologies are printed in huge numbers, and they're printed on cheap newsprint. They are definitely meant to be disposable. A lot of people that live in cities have very limited space and wouldn't want to keep those big volumes. They'll buy them to read them, but if they love a specific story in it, that's where you get those compact tankobon editions. Either way, you get to appreciate the story and the art. But it's very different. They do not have the same collector mentality that we have here, and some of that is because of how it's produced. He revealed that he spent over $500,000 for the first chapter of Dragon Ball Z, first appearance of Goku and Bulma, I believe. I'm not an expert on Dragon Ball. That's graded in a 9.2. He also bought, for an undisclosed amount, but we could presume pretty close, the first chapter of One Piece. Newer, but not necessarily new, and probably, I think you could argue, a little more popular. I have never wanted to buy anything by him, but I believe you. I believe you that Prime is not good. Anyway, that is an incredible amount of money that is not typically spent on these books. Yes, but not quite like here. But yes, there are places you can go. Say if you're in Tokyo, you could go to Jimbocho, which has lots of old books and stuff. And there are even stores that will have some American comic book back issues. But they're not humongous. And they can go for a pretty penny because there's more demand per capita. But, these days you can go online and get most of this stuff. Anyway, a large amount of manga fans and readers are disappointed because he's bringing a speculator mentality to something that has traditionally not had a large speculator mentality. When you're talking about spending well over $500,000, possibly over $1 million on just 2 issues, you're putting something out into the mainstream to sort of raise the value of what you've invested in. That's what he does. He's done that with Pokemon cards. I understand that a little bit because those are collectible everywhere. That is part of what it is that it's collectible. But he's manipulating a market here by doing this. And in a way that doesn't help. It doesn't help. Let's see. Steve says, recently bid on first One Piece a few months ago, lost my bid by $2 on eBay. Fat chance I will get it anytime soon, but I do have 999 of 1,000 chapters of One Piece. Congratulations. That's quite a collection you've assembled. You know, it doesn't have the same collectability because they keep this stuff reprinted. So to own the original printing is fun to hunt for. And, you know, if that is your favorite thing, it's cool. But there's not as much demand for it because it's very accessible and easy to get started reading it with a current reprint. Beyond the fact that he is creating an artificial investment bubble around this stuff, he literally, in a video this past week, called the main character of One Piece Luffy D. Monkey, which might have just been an innocent mistake. But lots of people are saying, that kind of seems like he's, at best, a casual fan. At worst, he has no idea what he's talking about. He got it wrong. He flipped it. Might be an innocent mistake. If you're going to spend $500,000 on this, you'd think you'd be such a big fan. You just couldn't make that mistake, right? I don't know. It led a lot of people to say that they don't think he's overly familiar with it. I'm disappointed to see that, like, you know, Beckett is trying to get into this game, and I don't think the Japanese market will change because I don't think that they would have already had this interest. If, you know, they would have already had this interest in collecting back issues. You can go to places like Mandarake and they will have old back issues of Weekly Shonen Jump in different conditions, but they don't grade them. That's just not a thing there. Absolutely, manga artists sell original art. I've bought some from manga artists, but yeah. I think he's just a guy that does this for money. He bought this, he's promoting it, he's creating the interest, and he's probably going to flip it, you know? Didn't he have people like partially invest in owning his super rare Charizard card, only for that company to be found out that they were never even actually selling partial ownership in that, and he's kept it? So I don't trust him. Thank you for the super chat. Logan Paul is a flippin' poser, and it's officially time we should gatekeep what we enjoy now, especially from guys like him. What do you think? Yeah, I don't want to gatekeep the idea of collecting. I understand that, like, for some people, it's the hunt or the thrill of getting a better version of something that's their favorite. I get that. But when it's done for purely mercenary reasons, done purely for the speculation and for making money, I don't like that. And if that's gatekeeping, then I am fine with, like, looking down on that. Just two, to be honest. I've got a piece by Katsuhiro Otomo. It is not an original page that he penciled for Akira, but what he did was on a high-end print of one of his pages, he did the actual colors on it as a color guide. I got that through Felix Art, you know, the art dealer. To me, that's the closest I'll get to some, like, even that was a lot. That's the closest I'll get to owning, you know, a high-end manga thing. But to me, that means a lot. And just at the last Emerald City Comic-Con, Toshio Maeda was there, who invented the genre of tentacle porn. That's not my thing, but I do kind of, he's a good artist, and I appreciate that he created sort of a weird subgenre. So that's comic history to me. So I bought a piece from him. It was also super affordable. Anyway. Oh, that is a good point. This might be beyond even the fact that he's investing in this, like, as an investment. This is a good point, because you're right. Like, iShowSpeed is a content creator that has definitely been doing showing that he's a fan of manga and superheroes for a long time. You know, like for Halloween, he had a really nice Black Flash costume. But Ryan is arguing maybe part of this is just to build up their feud because they do pro wrestling stuff. So maybe part of it is just trying to build up the feud. I don't know how many wrestling fans would care. Anyway, I am going to continue, but I don't like this guy, and I worry about what it could do to manga collecting here in America. Let me acknowledge this. Hearing that monster say, Luffy D. Monkey, brought me absolute rage for a brief second. It's you hear it and you're like I honestly thought I was having an aneurysm for half a second. I was like, what did I just? Oh, I did hear it right. He just got it wrong. Anyway, lots of reasons not to like it. Moving forward. As long as I'm talking about manga, I did want to put this on people's radar because this sounds so interesting to me specifically. So, on Monday, Shogakukan's magazine Big Comic Original launched a new ongoing manga feature. It is by Teo Matsumoto and a French artist, Cyril Pedrosa. Now, it's called Nanbanjin, which means foreign outsider. And it sounds really interesting. The story is specifically set in 1543. Now, that is when the first Portuguese began to arrive in Japan. It opened up a new world of trade because Japan was very closed to the outside world at this point in time. They arrived specifically at Tanegashima, and they introduced the matchlock firearms to Japan's military world. It definitely changed, you know, well, it just changed everything about their military, their whole feudal system by adding guns. And in fact, those original flintlock or matchlock firearms, they still call that Tanegashima over there. Like after like the port that the Portuguese arrived in, they call the gun the same thing as the town. So it really changed Japan in a big way. Matsumoto, if you don't know, he's very famous for a lot of manga. Tokyo These Days was from a few years ago, still winning awards. That's one Daniel Warren Johnson introduced me to specifically, and thank goodness, because it's really interesting look at the last day of a manga editor at his job, and then like what he does in Tokyo that day, as well as, excuse me, I'm hiccuping, Tekken Kinkt, which was made into a very famous and successful anime or movie, really. But anyway, Pedrosa is a French artist of Portuguese descent, so very appropriate for something like this. He's worked on Disney movies like Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules, but also award-winning comics like Golden Age in Portugal. Really Bande Dessinée. I call it comics because it's all the same thing. But yeah. Oh, cool. Oh, you know about Cyril. That's so cool. Nice to see you, Andy. Thank you for everything the past couple of weeks. I really appreciate your help and friendship. So, yeah, let's see. It was a huge cultural influence. It's why they say oi like in Portuguese. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that on people's radar. Sure, most of us aren't going to be reading the weekly Japanese, or I think this is actually monthly now that I think of it, but I can't remember. Big Comic Original. Is Big Comic Original weekly or monthly? I think it's monthly. But it's got two amazing high-level creators, and it's not the most common thing in the world for mainstream manga to use artists outside of Japan. It's becoming more common, but it's still not like the most common. And I think it's just a really, really cool thing that's happening here. Sounds like I like history as well. So if you like, for instance, Shogun was just recently remade on FX, right? If you like Shogun, or if you like the what was the movie by Martin Scorsese about the Catholic missionaries that go to Japan? What was that called? It had Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield. Boy, that movie was fantastic. I can't remember what it's called. But if you like that, Silence. Thank you so much, M Serial. You guys know I'm terrible at names. Silence, yeah. If you guys like those things, you all know. You all knew. Thank you. If you like Shogun or Silence, I really think that this book might interest you as well. Yeah, Goodfellas. That was the one. That was the one. Now that I think of it, as a film nerd, I love gangster movies. I think that they're a very uniquely American film, like Goodfellas, Casino, Godfather. They're very American, and even though they're like, got that Italian background, they're very American. And I used to watch in the 90s all sorts of interesting Hong Kong movies about the triads and stuff. But I feel like I've never dove into like Yakuza crime movies. That would probably be something I'd be into. Oh, cool. I'm glad you're learning about Billy Bat. Fantastic book, is finally getting an English release. I am a big enough nerd that absolutely adores Naoki Urasawa. Might be my favorite creator period. That I bought the entire Japanese manga for Billy Bat. I have not read it all, but it's really interesting. Strong recommend when that comes out. Black Rain. That's the one with Michael. What's his nuts? Oh, I love Beat Takeshi, and I've seen him in plenty of stuff. But now that you say that, yeah, I don't know that I've seen any of his Japanese crime movies. Michael Douglas, right? Folks, read Billy Bat. Read Billy Bat. Anyway, when it comes out in English, anyway. All right, I'll continue. But I wanted to put this Michael What's His Nuts from Aunt What's His Nuts. All right, I'll continue. There's a lot of news tonight. This one's just fun. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. Marvel is going to launch a Predator versus Planet of the Apes 5-issue series. Written by Greg Pak. Greg has written some great comics. Certainly, everybody knows World War Hulk. That was a fantastic era for Hulk. Art by Alan Robinson. That's going to begin in July. It's a fun idea. This is the first time those two properties have crossed over. There have not been previous comic book versions crossing those two things over, but it's because Disney purchased 20th Century Fox and its properties back in 2019. So, there you go. The story is going to feature a three-way war between humans, apes, and the Yautja, the titular predators, which develops after a Yautja crash lands on the planet where a human astronaut is embedded in the ape society. That's bonkers. I don't know. It seems fun. There's a really cool variant cover I almost showed here, but it didn't show the ape. It's Chris Campana or Campana. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but he's done a lot of variant covers lately. He did a cool variant cover that's a direct homage to the original Predator movie, but instead of Arnold being targeted, it's like a predator being targeted, and yeah, I don't know. It looks good. It looks good. Hey, thank you, Pasta Gene. I can really use the help these days. So thank you. Have a few comics on you, and my cat said meow. That's awesome. That's awesome. So pretty crazy, but yes, I have those issues. Somebody sent them to me once back in the day. Planet of the Apes, Alien Nation crossover. Yeah. I can't wait to see Dan Trachtenberg make a sequel to his last Predator movie. He's got to do that soon. He's got to. I'm just saying that's what I want. I'm trying to will it into the world. I like that last movie a lot. I've got a few Marvel pieces. You may remember, but last year Marvel launched 616 Day. Hadn't occurred to them before, but hey, their main universe is called 616. So now on June 16th, excuse me, 616, June 16th, they do something. And this is the second year they're going to release a blind bag. Of course they are. Celebrating Doctor Doom. And each issue will include one black and white edition of Doom Quest #1. That's by Ryan North and Francesco Mobili. So it's either going to have an exclusive variant cover by Simone Bianchi or a hand-drawn original sketch cover by a surprise artist. Okay, cool. And then one facsimile edition of a classic Doctor Doom story, either with its original cover or a variant cover. So 3 potential back issues with Doctor Doom, and you'll either get a facsimile reprint cover or a new variant cover. Either Avengers 25, Fantastic Four 258, or, in my opinion, the most fun one, Iron Man 149. At least, if I'm remembering that right anyway. Wasn't that the one where Doctor Doom and Iron Man go back in time to Sir Arthur's Camelot and have to work together to get back home? I think that was issue 149 and 150. It will also have a Doctor Doom paper mask featuring artwork by Jack Kirby. Or you can just, become Doom himself. Doom sees you. Bah! That's Doom's catchphrase. BAH! Bah! Can't wait to hear Robert Downey Jr. do a silly accent saying bah. Anyway, kind of a fun idea, but boy, is Marvel leaning into the gimmicks and stuff these days. You know what's I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to something interesting from a comic that I read this week. So, in this issue's Void Rivals, Robert Kirkman, the writer, answers several fan questions to the comic. And he's got a really interesting point that's relevant to Marvel, okay? And DC. So somebody asked about maybe including ROM in the Energon universe. That's the context. And Robert's saying we should definitely look into that. But then he said, and the person asked if they would renumber at some point. Here, I'll just read Robert on renumbering. As we've seen with the Transformers recently... No, I'm not going to do the whole thing in his voice. As we've seen with Transformers recently, if the creative team changes and the numbering stays the same, you still get a spike in sales, as if it were in issue 1. And long term, the numbers seem to be holding strong, whereas oftentimes, volume 2 or 20 at this point tends to collapse back down to what the final issues of the previous run were and keep dropping from there, but often at a faster pace. Renumbering is pointless. I only hope one day Marvel and DC realize this. It's a guy that's been making comics long enough that he would know, and I agree. This constant renumbering does not help. It doesn't help. My head is too big for the Marvel Legends helmet. Oh. Just start getting dumber, and then your head shrinks. That's all you have to do. Just get dumber. Thought that was an interesting point that Robert made. As long as I'm talking about it, I've got somewhat related news. Marvel is going to celebrate the 65th anniversary of Fantastic Four this year. They're going to have an oversized issue of the series in August. And they're also going to print a book called Fantastic Four, 65 Years of the World's Greatest Comic Covers. And it says it'll collect over 700 covers from the series. I take that to mean all the covers, because this would be issue something like 712, 714. Mignola does renumbering with Hellboy. However, first of all, I wish he didn't, but I will point out each is its own dedicated story arc and can be read in and of itself. So if you're looking for that title and that number, it'll still make sense. Fantastic Four issue 15 is going to be this anniversary issue. Legacy number 741. Excuse me. They're further ahead than I realized. That's by the regular team, Ryan North, Humberto Ramos. And it's going to see the team colliding with their own history with no hope of returning home unless a total stranger can help them to return to the present day. Okay. The time travel story will also incorporate some classic moments by key Fantastic Four creators of the past, including Jack Kirby, John Buscema, John Byrne, and Steve Epting. And the book of covers will feature commentary from current and past Fantastic Four creators, and that comes out August 5th. I don't know. I like the idea of a book of just hundreds and hundreds of covers from that one book, that one title. I do like that. I do that for a lot of different superheroes. Fitted hat size 8. I got big head lesson plan done. Big brain. Thanks for the support, Steve. That's very kind of you. I'm glad that, like, Marvel at least usually lists things like a legacy number these days, but this renumbering thing is just bleh. It doesn't help. It makes it confusing. I don't like it. Real quick thing. Marvel skipped Hall H last year for San Diego Comic-Con, but this year the Wrap reports that Marvel will be in Hall H, the big venue for the convention. Marvel Studios will have its traditional Saturday evening panel, presumably to promote the upcoming Avengers Doomsday set for December 18th. That's what the news reports say. Oh my God. Wait, they might be thinking of that. I feel like I read a news article that they were actually considering that, Andy. I could be wrong. Spider-Man Brand New Day is not expected to be the focus of the panel, possibly because that's really owned by Sony, even though it's done with the MCU. So that they probably wouldn't be the focus of their panel. It is likely that the panel will show the trailer that they showed to cinema owners at CinemaCon last month, and they'll probably have a bunch of the actors on stage. That's typically what they do. And it is possible that they'll be teasing stuff about Avengers Secret Wars and X-Men. Those would be the next two really big things that they probably want to put on people's radar. So if you want to start camping out now, maybe you can get into that panel. You'll be right behind the people that are camping out to hear the news about Sam Raimi directing a new Spider-Man movie. Speaking of reboot stuff, Marvel's launching a new Miles Morales Spider-Man series, putting the hero back in his classic red and black suit. Personally, I'm glad. I think Sarah Pacelli's design for that suit it might not be quite as iconic as Ditko's Spider-Man, but it's a damn good suit, and I don't think any of the updates have ever surpassed it, personally. It's by writer Brian Edward Hill, who obviously had a lot of success over the last couple of years writing Ultimate Black Panther, and artist Nico Leon, who I'm not familiar with, but apparently did Psylocke Ninja. There are just too many X books for me to keep up with. That's going to begin August 12th. So what's the idea? Hill said he plans, first of all, to introduce new villains and new supporting characters. I literally like hearing something that small because I feel like a lot of the superhero books these days shy away from adding new elements, that they want to keep all the ideas for creator-owned stuff. But these books thrive on new ideas, not just recycling the old stuff. The first arc will apparently be about a threat from his father Jeff's past working with S.H.I.E.L.D., which will target the entire Morales family. So something personal. And then they've got covers by Simone DeMeo. Nice cover. Cool angle. I like it. I like it quite a bit. It's interesting as I look at this, how, how would this have been drawn, I'm wondering, 30 years ago? It would look very, very similar, but we wouldn't have the same digital techniques to sort of blur the extreme foreground to show the motion, or some of these like very subtle lens flares. We just wouldn't have had that. It would have still looked very cool because it's a good layout. It's a well organized idea. But it is interesting how, like, the new techniques, I don't think that they're bad or distracting. All of a sudden it just sort of occurred to me that there's a bunch of new techniques being used on this newer. Miles is great. Miles is a really good character. I think Bendis and Pichelli had some good ideas, but I will also argue that originally Miles was very close to Peter Parker. He's a gifted kid going to school. He didn't really have something that differentiated him enough. It's like, yeah, the fact that he had his parents. But I think that the first animated movie, giving him that interest in graffiti and street art, and then the video games, taking that and adding like his interest in music, really it seems small, but I really think that those things helped give him a more unique personality than he had in the Ultimate Comics originally. But I think a lot of superheroes, to be clear, take several years to bake and get turned into what we recognize. I'm sure a lot of you are aware that, when Superman was created, he didn't have Lex Luthor or Kryptonite or the ability to fly even, let alone some of his other, vision-based powers. So a lot of these characters take a long time to really form into what we think of as their iconic selves. But I like Miles a lot. And I'm a little curious about this, that's all. So I thought I'd put it there. Here's a different black superhero. Jerry. That's a portmanteau of three different things. Jeremy, monster, and a star. Jerry. What do you call a portmanteau with three ideas? I guess it's still just a portmanteau. Anyway, Jeremiah Love. Some of you that aren't into only comics will know that Jeremiah Love was drafted 3rd overall in the 2026 NFL draft. Running back for Arizona Cardinals, previously running back for Notre Dame. Really amazing player. But apparently, he's also working on a comic book. I love that portmanteau. Wait, was Postal with who's that artist? The one that does Christopher Chaos, Isaac Goodhart. I've read that. Anyway, here's a quote from the website that sells this book. Working alongside his father, Jason Love, and a team that includes Eisner-nominated writer Carl Bollers, veteran artists Ryan Otogawa and Matteo Illuminati, and editorial strategy from Subsume Studios, Jeremiah built a universe from the ground up. Issue number 1 is out now. The story is set in a world where a meteor hit Earth and 1 out of every 4 people became superpowered. So, with this many superpowered people, they started Superpowered Sports League. Jeremiah is the first person to have all 5 abilities. In this world, you can get 1 of 5 abilities, but Jeremiah has all 5. Speed, strength, agility, vision, and invulnerability. Anyway, if it sounds like the kind of thing you might you can literally just type in Jeremonstar or probably even Jeremiah Love still, and you can buy it off his website. I just appreciate when comics get pushed to mainstream audiences. And while this doesn't seem like the most groundbreaking idea, it feels kind of derivative in some ways. it still might hook some new people. I don't think it's got any physical distribution. It is a physical comic that you can get, but it's on his website. Yeah, the dad being the creative lead. Hey, he's a young guy. But he's a talented guy. Getting drafted third is obviously you're one of the best of the best. This is, in some ways, it does sound a little close to NFL Super Pro. Just to be clear, it does sound a little bit like that. NFL Super Pro meets My Hero Academia, something like that. Anybody out there know Razor Man? According to Deadline, Razor Man is a live-action feature based on the graphic novel series by writer-artist Bill Masuko, and it's published by Kugali Media. They did the Iwaju animated series on Disney+. So anyway, that's getting developed as a live-action feature. It's set in Zimbabwe, and the project will center on the main character, Lovemore, a scrappy young mechanic in Harare who assumes the identity of the street vigilante known as Razor Man. Armed with razor-sharp wit and makeshift weapons, he wages a dangerous one-man war against the 13th, a ruthless and well-connected crime syndicate responsible for his father's mysterious murder. South African filmmakers Mandala Dube and Kurt Ellis are attached to direct and write, respectively. And Bill Masuko himself, if you don't know that name, I'll just let you know, he is originally from Zimbabwe, and he's previously self-published the comic book Captain South Africa. He also created the book Runeless for Disney Hyperion. So, good for him. Good for him. Just thought I'd put that out there. Before the movie comes out, you could read this African comic book. Oh, man. Stuff happening with the Angouleme Comic Book Festival. All right. So, wait. Yeah, I've heard of Iyanu, but I haven't seen it. But, yeah. I haven't seen it, sorry. All right, so let's talk about Angouleme. More drama with Angouleme. The Association for the Development of Comics in Angouleme is a stakeholders group of 9 people that represent comic book publishers, comic book artists, the town of Angouleme, as well as fine arts and I think one other sort of group. So it's 9 people. And they voted to have the Morgaine Group take over running the Angouleme Comic Strip Festival. If you go back a little over a month, the episode of this show that has, that the Fantagraphics shipment going through the Strait of Hormuz got attacked, that episode, I talk about how the ADBDA had 4 contenders to take over running this festival. And they decided on the Morgaine Group, which I had said was probably the front runner and most likely to win. Not that that makes me a prophet, but if you want to worship me, I understand. Anyway, the Morgaine Group is headed by co-directors Céline Bagot and Marie Parisot. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your names right. I've never studied anything French. Jesus, this light. They have extensive comics and event history, so it makes sense. They've worked for big publishers, and how about I get it real bright? Get a sunburn doing this show. Anyway, they've also done events and stuff. And once they were announced, they said that the Angouleme Comics Festival will return January 2027. I thought that was interesting because there had been rumors that they would move it to a different time of the year. But no. I think it's going to be the Patriots versus the Seahawks again, but this time the Patriots will win. Ooh, other recurring stories. No, I guess those are the two that I keep coming back to. So the organization FIBD stands for a bunch of French words, and Ninth Art previously ran this festival. But they were boycotted, and I'm simplifying this, but they were boycotted by the vast majority of the publishers and artists. Like, they were going to have 0 guests. So they had to cancel this past January's festival. And they were being boycotted over allegations that have been made in French press over financial mismanagement, as well as a really unpopular firing of a female employee who had reported being assaulted at one of these events. Rather than investigate, they fired her. Not a good move. Not a good move, in my opinion. What do I know? So anyway, now that this new group has been announced to run the event, FIBD and Ninth Art have launched a lawsuit because they claim that this is parasitism, and FIBD holds the rights to the name of the festival, not the idea of having a comic festival in that town, to be clear, but the name and like the cat mascot. They legally own that stuff. They're sort of ignoring in this lawsuit the fact that everybody was boycotting them. So it's like, okay, let's just say you get your way and the Morgaine group can't host a festival. You've still got no festival because nobody is going to participate with you. So, but they're just trying to probably get some money out of like the courts. What a mess. What a mess this is. The good news for fans is that Angouleme has this huge history of loving bande dessinée and comics and manga. 1974, this show's been going on. I think San Diego Comic-Con is only a little older. I want to say 1970 is when they started. So Angouleme has a huge, huge history here. I think that a lot of creators and fans, and of course the people of the town, want to see this continue. Overall, it's good news. It's coming back. I think that's cool. I think it's cool. Yeah, if they fired the president, they probably could have continued, but they wouldn't do it. So they're very difficult. I bet a bunch of you will like this idea. Look at this. Comic Book Club revealed that writer-artist Matt Kindt is launching a new open source certification, 100% human-made. It's available to any artist who wants to proclaim that they made everything themselves without AI. Nice. Thank you for the support. Completely off-topic question. Your fave 2 or 3 albums of all time? Licensed to Ill by the Beastie Boys. For David Bowie, I think I'd choose one. Maybe the Ziggy Stardust album. And I think maybe my taste changed too. Like if you ask me tomorrow, it might be all rap or all 80s new wave. We'll say Rumors by Fleetwood Mac. I'm old. Fun. Oh, Hunky Dory. Yeah, I'll choose Hunky Dory instead for my. But anyway, fun. Let me go back to this 100% human-made thing. This emblem will officially launch on Oni Press's Mind Management New and Improved #1 that comes out June 24th. Obviously, a book by Matt. Kindt released this under a Creative Commons 4.0 license, so you can use it with the following attribution. It just needs to say 100% human-made, copyright 2026 by Matt Kindt, LLC, is licensed under Creative Commons by SA 4.0. Cool. Folks can access a high-res EPS file here. just something cool to say, like, to AI and woo to original brain created, hand created art. Look at these. Low, Hunky Dory, and Station to Station for me. 1,000 Suns by Linkin Park is definitely my top 5. DJ Shadow introducing Paul Simon Graceland, Underworld's second toughest in the infants. These are interesting. I guess so, but they get called out for it, so yeah. It's just it's an idea, not like a way to verify anything. It's just a way to call it out. And I think it's a positive little move. It's nice. A quick little bit here, but 2000 AD announced that they're making a 48-page summer special. That'll come out July 22nd. I want to say that it's like £5. Anyway, it features a cover from 2000 AD legend Liam Sharp. I think it's a really nice cover. And news stories for Judge Dredd, Strontium Dog, Judge Death, and the return of Thriller, featuring the return of the King of Crime, Stickleback, which I don't know a whole lot about, to be honest. This week also had an interview with director Duncan Jones, son of David Bowie, by the way. He's the director of movies like Moon, Warcraft, Mute. Mute was his last movie. That was all the way back in like 2018. He's on Deadline, and he talks about his work on the animated Rogue Trooper film, which also, hand in hand with this interview, they released a teaser trailer for. I like Rogue Trooper. Rogue Trooper's cool. So I'm looking forward. I hope that that's good. I hope. We'll see. So, here's a quick thing for some of you out there. RG Yarena? I'm just guessing. Anyway, he's the head of publishing at Heavy Metal Magazine, and he posted this. Looks like they're taking submissions for finished short stories. Since my post looking for concept artists worked so well, with candidates still being considered, let's try this. I'm looking for short stories, 8 to 12 pages long, for upcoming Heavy Metal Magazine issues. This will be a licensed deal. I need finished stories, color or black and white, though color is preferred. There's no deadline, so if you have something ready, send it over. Due to the high volume of submissions, I will only respond to those that are a potential fit. And you've got an email here. So if by any chance you have some sort of a short sci-fi or fantasy type of story, maybe you want to shoot that over and see if you can work out a deal. I don't know. Seems like a good opportunity for emerging artists, potentially. We'll see. Oh, this is a book that I loved, and I can't believe that it's this old. But Pride of Baghdad, award-winning graphic novel by Brian K. Vaughan and Nico Henrichsen, is getting a 20th anniversary edition on September 23rd. I can't believe that that is 20 years old. That makes me feel old because that doesn't feel like an old comic to me. That was originally released under DC's Vertigo imprint when it was also a creator-owned label. Anyway, the new version is coming out through Image. It's going to be a hardcover edition. It will have new back matter material as well as an afterword by writer Brian K. Vaughan. The story, if you haven't read it, first of all, it looks gorgeous. And it's really interesting. It's a fictional take based on a real-life story. The United States invade Iraq back in 2003. Their bombing and stuff like that, their missiles, led to a pride of lions escaping from the Baghdad Zoo in real life. This comic follows their journey, and they get to talk to each other. They're not cartoon animals. They're not drawn like cartoons, just like say, feral or something, or stray dogs, but they do talk with each other and with other animals. Really, really interesting story based on something real, but obviously creates characters out of like these animals. Ooh, Needless to say, both are amazing, but which do you prefer? Pride of Baghdad or We Three? They're both about animals going on, like, a journey, trying to find a safe space. In a way, both kind of the idea of Watership Down, which is in turn the Odyssey, which we'll get as a movie this week by Batman director Christopher Nolan. I think I sort of prefer We Three for its ideas and the fact that I'm a nerd for Frank Quitely art specifically. But We Three is heartbreaking. And Pride of Baghdad has some darkness and seriousness to it, but I think ultimately doesn't make me want to cry as much. So I think, like, Pride of Baghdad is an interesting, very cool story, but I think I'd choose We Three over it I don't know. Oh yeah, Beasts of Burden, great book. Beautiful art, cool stories, written by Evan Dorkin, who's mostly known for, I think a lot of his humor books. But yeah, follows a bunch of dogs and one cat that solve supernatural crimes, but drawn very realistically by all of a sudden I'm blanking on her name. Somebody help me out on the artist of Beasts of Burden. She is a gorgeous illustrator. I like her work. Jill Thompson. Thank you, Jill Thompson, the wonderful Jill Thompson. I mentioned that. What would I do on this show if I didn't have, like, my live chat to support me? I'd need, like, a producer going, like, you're forgetting this very obvious name. No, it's not coming out this week. I'm just saying it's coming out. I didn't say this week. We Three is a tough read. It really is. But it's pretty cool. Anyway. He didn't post it to Instagram. He posted it to his Facebook account. Well, you say almost, Rob. I definitely did cry the first time I read it. Not like, ugly crying, but definitely like some tears coming down and going like, whew, that was an emotional ride. Anyway, another Image book. I'll always mention something like this, won't I? Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Probably my favorite creative team. I just love them. They're so consistent and so damned good. Anyway, they announced their newest graphic novel today. It's called Unfinished Tales. It's set for release this winter. The Image Comics press release describes the book. Unfinished Tales follows Finnegan Blake, one of the most successful authors in the world. His best-selling books have been made into one of the biggest shows on TV. But Finn can't enjoy all the fame and fortune because he's 10 years past his deadline on the last book in his epic fantasy series. George R. R. Martin, anyone? And has no hope of ever finishing it until an old friend shows up with the perfect solution to his writer's block. But as their secret pact turns dark and these writers' egos clash, Finn will see how far he's willing to go to get his final book onto the bestseller list. Most writers would kill for Finn's life. Will he? Anyway, that's going to be released, and this is a reminder of what they're doing now. They release stuff to comic book stores 1 month early. So, comes out in comic book stores November 11th, and then online and in bookstores December 8th. Good for them. Very, very cool that they're doing something like that for comic book stores. Give them a month window to sell. I'll certainly be buying mine from my local comic book shop. Yes, I'm such a shill. I love them. I love them. I love what I love, but I try to be upfront and honest about that, just to be clear. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Yeah. All right. This is also something that's like positive. A lot of this news this week is positive. The New Yorker contributor Paul Noth has been named the first Cartoonist Laureate of Wisconsin. The title was established by the Museum of Wisconsin Art. Good. Recipients receive a grant to serve as ambassador for the comics medium in the state for a 3-year term. They serve in an advisory role on educational programs at the museum, where they'll also get an exhibition based on their work. And they get recognition at the Wisconsin State Capitol. Very similar in a lot of ways to what Vermont does. Wisconsin becomes the second state after Vermont to create a Cartoonist Laureate position. So, very cool. I can't wait to see, as the years go on, what other artists are from Wisconsin and get represented. But I love it. I think it's a full month. Nice to see you, as always. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a full month. I think it's beautiful that Brubaker and Phillips can afford to take 6 months at a time and give us a full story all at once. Just amazing. I'm so glad that they're in that position. Look at this. I was so surprised to see this news today, but it was reported today that Sony hired screenwriter Brian Helgeland, who has written some great movies like Mystic River and LA Confidential, to write a movie version of Django Zorro. This would be, I'm not clear reading all the different news articles about it. It's either a continuation of or an adaptation of the 2015 comic book that was written by Quentin Tarantino and Matt Wagner, with art by Steve Poles. It crossed over Tarantino's bounty hunter character from Django Unchained with, the pulp hero, man of the people. He's been TV, film, comics, novels, Diego de la Vega. Specifically, it was sort of an older version of de la Vega, if you haven't read it. In the comic, Django starts by getting hired as a bodyguard for de la Vega, and they end up teaming up to battle the Archduke of Arizona to free the indigenous people. The comic was co-published by Dynamite and Vertigo. Dynamite had the rights to Zorro at the time. Vertigo, I don't know how they got that, but probably Warner Brothers or something. Anyway, according to Deadline, Tarantino won't direct, no surprise there at all, but has apparently given his blessing to use the character of Django, and the film would introduce a new young Zorro. Probably had De La Vega as well. I think that sounds awesome. Always good to see you, Brunson. Thanks for jumping in. I don't think that there is, I literally don't think that there is a bad Quentin Tarantino movie. I think he's a little weird. I like some of his movies more than others, and he's got his little tropes and peccadillos, but I think all of his movies are honestly very, very good, and Django Unchained is certainly no exception. Seriously, I don't know. I can't think of any movie that he directed that's bad. So, great. I love the idea. It would depend on, who's directing it. It would depend on exactly what version of Zorro they want to use. And I would hope that this would be something, if it's good, that they can get Jamie Foxx to redo his role. But if they can line all those elements up, that's pretty cool. And it's kind of cool that it's based on a comic. So, just something weird that I never saw happening as a movie, but apparently it's in the works. So far, to be clear, the only person that's on board is a screenwriter, but that's the first step. I suppose you'll never see Liefeld draw a Tarantino book. Damn you, Randy. I spend quite a bit of time trying to think of like 3 decent monologue jokes now for the opening of the show. And Randy just like basically cratered me with that. You'll never see. The one person Tarantino won't allow to draw his book, Rob Liefeld. Oh my God, that's so good. That's so good, Randy. Maybe we could fine tune the actual punchline, but I think we all get the joke, and that's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was really good. Dude, I think he'd be a great fit for something like that. I'd totally be down with that. But there's a lot of different cool directors that could do sort of that Western vibe. It's really important that it feels like a Western. Oh, last piece of news, but Newsarama has gone defunct according to their last employee, longtime writer for the site, George Marson. They posted to Instagram that they were laid off after 17 years. This was all part of a series of layoffs by the parent company, Future PLC, across their news and journalism sites. It's too bad, but kind of the writing, I think, has been on the wall for a number of years. Newsarama launched as a comics news site all the way back in 1998. And after a bunch of acquisitions, they were folded into the news section of Games Radar. They were on Games Radar Plus, but the visibility kept going down. You know, they let a lot of writers go over the last few years. It just never quite had enough traction, and it was kind of obvious that it was on the way out unless they wanted to beef it back up somehow. So, yeah, Newsarama. And I think that if you track it down more, I didn't have time to do like a full deep dive on the research, but I'm pretty sure that, like most news sites about comics, it got its start more on message boards with like people posting articles on message boards. And eventually people were like, hey, we could combine this into a site. And I forget who was the editor that thought that up. I should have thought that up. But anyway, I just sort of wanted to mention it. I'm bummed out anytime I see any of the sort of comic book publications, including online or print, fold. I saw that Sketched magazine was going to go on a small hiatus, but I think that was specifically because the guy that runs that just wanted to take a small break. And I'm like, yeah, don't burn out. Take a break. Better than going away. Yeah, isn't that amazing to think it's 28 years ago? I can't believe CBR is still running. They spoil everything. CBR is still running. I think so is comicbook.com. For news on comics, there's still AIPT. There's ICV2. What else? Bleeding Cool, I guess, sort of counts. It's more gossip, I feel like, but we'll share press releases and stuff like that too. What else is out there for like comic book news? I want to say Comic Book Club gets every once in a while an exclusive, so they're bigger than just sort of like a fan site. The thing about like comic book resources is, and I'm sure that this is, just the editors realizing what works for them, but it's so many top 10 lists. Top 10 this, top 10 that. Oh, yeah, that's one I was trying to think of. Thank you, Mike. Comics Beat. Yep. Comics Beat and what else? I'm trying to think of what else. I don't know. Comic book movies? I don't think I really go to that one. These days, I mostly get my comics news from whatever makes its way onto Twitter. I get that. Yep. I guess I didn't realize that CBR does a bunch of spoilers. Oh, EJ, is that you with a new handle? I think it's our favorite Energon adjacent book, Blood and Thunder, and covers for Transformers guy, EJ Sue. Comic Vine superhero hype. I have to admit, I guess I don't check on those regularly. Well, anyway, that was what I have for news of the week, but there's a lot more show to get to today. Why don't we pivot over to reviewing some of the comics that came out this week, and then after that, I've got plenty to talk about of what's going on with comic tropes and behind the scenes and other adjacent comic book media. So yeah, let's do reviews.
Let's review.
Review it.
The review.
The reviews are in. I repeat, the reviews are in.
Go to your reviews.
What?
Speaking of bad reviews,
Don't worry about that review.
Let's review all the facts.
All right, gentlemen, let's review.
Before we do, let's review.
Those reviews really came out fast.
Maybe we can review some right now?
I'm not going to review all that again.
Now let's review.
Not my worst review.
Let's review, shall we? To review.
I think I've reviewed about as much as I can.
There we go. All right. Thank you for your patience while I get that set up. So, I think it makes sense to discuss the biggest release of the week. Pretty sure that this was number one on the top 10 most sold books this week. Marvel's version of Spider-Man, Superman. I will say something that I strongly suspected when the second Batman Deadpool crossover came out. I definitely saw that same exact confusion over this 1 month gap, and the fact that it's got the same characters, it's just by the different publishers. So new creative teams, people are thinking that this is just reprints with variant covers. And I got to say, I think this is one place where variant covers are really hurting the book itself. I think that the sales for this would very likely be stronger if people absolutely knew that this was not what DC released last month. I think that they should probably just call it number 2 or something like that and not have variant covers. Literally, maybe one variant cover. I get it. I get why they're doing it. They are trying to, Marvel and DC just want to both put their biggest names on the book. And I get that. And a lot of the covers look fantastic. They're a lot of fun. But I think it's literally led to more confusion and potentially lost sales. Because I was in the store and I saw people starting to have a conversation, and some other people went, "Oh, wait, that's new." They just didn't know. And I almost take it for granted that I know because I'm keeping up with the news. I'm sharing it with you. You guys probably know about this stuff a lot more than the average person that's going to a comic book store. So anyway, I just think Marvel and DC should have done a couple things. And I hate to sort of be I know better, but I really think if it more than a 1 month gap, first of all, and not all the variant covers, possibly even call it number 2, even if you're the second one publishing it. I know that they basically just swap the names depending on who's publishing it. Marvel put Spider-Man first, DC had put Superman first. But I think it's confusing people. Something like that, something to differentiate it. I'm glad that you weren't confused. A lot of people I saw were. As far as the book itself goes, I'd say it's fine. It's fine. I really wish I could say more than that. Some of it I like quite a bit, but every anthology is going to be hit and miss when you think about it. Art-wise, look, Pepe Larraz draws some beautiful artwork here. No question. But here's the thing. It's so short when you consider it. Let's see, how many pages is this? It's like the size of a regular comic book. This much is the main story. And then the rest of that is all backup stories. So it's half and half, okay? Great art. Brad Meltzer's story, didn't really do a whole lot for me, but I almost like don't blame the writer 100% because what are they supposed to do with such a small amount of space? It just hits the ground running, and it's like they don't get to meet and understand each other or anything. They've already met. Some villains have like put them under a ton of weight, and there's kryptonite there. And then who are the villains? I almost forget, honestly. I'm trying to flip. Oh, that's right. It's Lex Luthor and Green Goblin have like orchestrated this. But we don't get to see what their plan is, how it works. I don't know. It wasn't for me. I liked it well enough for the art. I don't think the story is in any way like cringe or bad, but it just doesn't have the space to structure any kind of a real story. There's nothing to it. It's just some stuff that's happening. I'll just talk briefly about my thoughts on the 4 backup stories. Wait, are there 4? 1, 2, sorry, there's more than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Jesus Christ. I think, again, I really hate to sound like a know-it-all, but I think that they could have gotten a lot more out of this by giving us something like a 64-page one-shot story that had room to breathe, and then take these stories and put that in like another 64, double the amount of pages. Sorry, that's what I think. What did I like out of these? I liked some, I didn't like others. The Spider-Man noir set back during Golden Age Superman, charming. It's very quick, but it's charming. The story with Lana Lang and Gwen Stacy, I like Humberto Ramos's art, but did it add up to anything? Not for me. I surprisingly like this. Now, this was a stretch as to like how it's a Superman Spider-Man story, right? This is a Marvel DC story because it's honestly mostly about the Thing. There's basically sort of like some sort of like a Red Lantern rage virus sent at all the superheroes and supervillains in the world. But there's a very few people that don't get affected by it. And that includes just people that like have either learned to control their anger or have really good handle on their emotions. Captain America, Stargirl, Superman, She-Hulk, Green Lantern, and the Thing. And I go, yeah, I think that makes sense that these are some people that like would potentially have the willpower or the focus to see past rage. It's just not in their nature to either be too angry or they've already dealt with similar problems. And I go, yeah, I get that. You've given me, in a very short amount of time, I'll say, a premise that I can buy into, and it's shown from the viewpoint of one character, the Thing. I like it. I liked it a lot. This is written by Jeff Johns, who hasn't done anything at Marvel in a long, long time. Art by Gary Frank. And it's just a good story. It's a good story about the Thing sort of feeling like a monster, but like realizing that he's kind of a good person. I don't know. It's good. I love Louise Simonson a lot, but I don't quite get what the hook was supposed to be with having Steel go up against Hobgoblin. Whatever. Similarly, there's not a whole lot to Ghost Spider and Supergirl meeting. It's like they don't really get along, but at the end, Ghost Spider's like, I guess I respect her. Okay. I do like the Brian Michael Bendis, Sarah Pichelli story with Miles getting to meet Superman. That I like. It's mostly just a respite during a big battle where they talk to each other for a little bit. But you know what? Like that's a moment. That's at least a scene. It's not trying to jam a whole story into a short amount of pages. It's a scene within a story. and they do a little bit of character work. And I thought it was well done. It looks good. It makes sense. As far as a short story goes, yes, I actually like that. I loved the artwork of Jane Foster Thor meeting Wonder Woman. Again, not really Spider-Man or Superman, but whatever. The story, it's sort of like just like they both exist in a shared universe. So it's like Darkseid has the Necro Sword. And it's fun ideas, but not a story. It's fun ideas, but not a story. And then there's like a couple pages of Spider-Man being sad written by Jeff Loeb that are just like literally a couple pages, and it's just nothing. It's nothing. Like, don't even, whatever. If you look closely at the Johns Frank story, you can see G.I. Robot and Dr. Phosphorus fighting Junkyard Joe and Geiger. Really? I have to admit, I was getting really checked out while I was reading this, so I was not looking for Easter eggs or fun stuff. That's interesting. I'm looking in the backgrounds. Don't really see it. Oh, okay. Hold on. Maybe one of these? I don't know. Well, I'm still missing it. It must be deep in the background. Tiny figures or something. I don't know. Where? Me look. Me not see. That'll be one fun thing to look for later. I don't see it. Oh, Jesus. I believed you. I was like, oh, it sounds like the... Oh, it's way less than the Hulk Harley story. At least that was just sort of a fun, like, joke. So, I don't know. This is almost critic proof. No matter what I say, you're either interested at the beginning or you're not. You know, I'm not going to say like that this is 1 out of 3 thumbs, and you'll go, oh, I'm not going to get it now, or I will get it. You know, there's definitely some good art. There's some great art. The stories, I just don't think that they have enough room to breathe. I think that the only stories I liked out of this, I liked the Spider-Man Noir, I liked The Thing, and I liked Miles meeting Superman. So I liked 3 short stories in this. 3 of the short stories. 3 of the 8 short stories. And then the main story, I liked the art, but I was like, this isn't a story. Oh, out of the 4 main stories, how would I rank them? That's fair. The Grant Morrison, Dan Mora, Batman Deadpool was the best. And then they're all fighting. Like, this one was probably my least favorite. And then the other 2... I guess I'd put the DC Superman, Spider-Man slightly ahead of the Marvel Deadpool Batman one. But they were good. The main stories were good. Yeah, a couple of these had like fun ideas, but showing us the idea briefly isn't the same as exploring that idea and finding, you know, the emotional weight, the human connection to that story, doing something interesting with it. I find the premise basically slightly flawed in terms of the amount of space they give to everything as compared to the actual work, you know, failing in any way. I wouldn't call any of the stories or art failing. I would just say I question the very premise of doing it this way. Is it enough space to truly tell a story and make that story feel necessary and special? It all ultimately just feels like this is an idea. Wouldn't this be interesting to explore? Anyway, we're done. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too critical. I might be, but it's probably just like a 1 out of 3 thumbs for me. And that's really just for the art. Here's one I think I'll give 2.5 to 3 thumbs out of, which is 3 thumbs is the best. Corpse Night is by filmmaker Michael Chavez, and let me be honest about my biases here. Matthew Roberts, somebody I consider a real life friend. Matt has drawn Battle Pope stuff, as well as Manifest Destiny, Universal Monsters, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Anyway, really cool story here. This is set in France during the time of Joan of Arc, okay? 1429. Look at that. That's very pretty, but also like very restrained. But Matt probably had to do a lot of research to know, like, what were the homes made out of then, farmlands and stuff like that. What did they have specifically for like a plow and for clothes and stuff like that? It's about a father and a daughter, but the father gets killed by some bad people. But before he dies, he told her about Joan of Arc, who's fighting for God and for France. And basically, the father protects his daughter, but dies, okay, from some brigands or something like that. Anyway, cut to later, those same sort of horrible people coming on the farmhouse, and they're gonna, I don't know, do horrible things and steal. And she's praying. Well, her prayer gets answered in the form of basically a type of a zombie. Her father returns from the dead and is just this Frankenstein-like horrible monster. Saves her and sets off on a quest. They've got a quest to find Joan of Arc to set things right. It's interesting. It's an interesting just beginning. It's beautiful artwork. It's kind of creepy and gory. I'm skipping past some of like the violence because that's kind of some of the fun to come across. It's badass, man. It's badass. I thought Corpse Night was pretty bad. No explanation on why they killed her dad, and then somehow she just goes on running the farm on her own. Well, I got the sense it was only for a day or two, but sure. I thought it was badass. I think it's an interesting starting point, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. I only know a little of Joan of Arc's history. So to tell the Joan of Arc story from the perspective not of Joan, not to make her the main character in the story, but to create these new characters, and that's going to be our entry point, is this huge lumbering, sort of corpse night and this innocent girl, and that'll be our entry point into understanding the Joan of Arc story. I think that's an interesting idea. Maybe I'm biased because I love Matt's artwork. Maybe I am biased, but I gave this at least, I would say I give it 2.5 out of 3 thumbs. I liked it. I think it was really, really cool. Yeah, just an interesting timeline to explore, an interesting bit of history, but it's gonna, like, I think, have some pretty extreme violence. Michael Chavez was, I guess, filming, I think The Nun 2 was the movie that he was filming in France when he was like coming up with this idea. He wanted to make a movie about Joan of Arc, but also this like horrible killer that was part of her army that worked with her, and she didn't realize what nobody did, like that he was like a real horrible degenerate. And then all of a sudden he was like, oh, wait a minute, instead of like making them the main character, what if I, shifted and told the story from a different perspective? I go, clever. Ooh, Joan of Arc primers. Drunk History. Haven't watched the Drunk History on it, so I like that idea. And Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Absolutely. She gets into jazzercise or something, right? Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It can only give the hint of the premise, but it was enough for me. I can't wait to read a second issue to explore this world some more and be sure that I like it. But as a setting it up, I thought it was pretty efficient. Do I think Robert should do a new Battle Pope series whenever a new Pope is chosen? Not necessarily, but I would love for Robert to come back and do a humor book again, like a book that's intentionally very humorous, because I think he's a very funny guy in real life, and I think Battle Pope, I think, is pretty good. It might not have aged perfectly now at this point, because it's, now that you say that, it is over 20 years old, but it was funny at the time, and Robert's a funny guy. Ah, yes, Guy de Rais was the scumbag that was in the army. So I think that is Michael Chavez's idea that he wants to explore. And I'm interested. The silent film Passion of Joan of Arc is a masterpiece. So the other one I want to talk about in depth, and then I'll probably just do quick reviews, like recommendation or not recommendation for everything else. But I want to talk a little about Head Lopper. And that's written, drawn, and lettered by Andrew MacLean. He's done a couple graphic novels before. This one is basically just shy of what you might call a graphic novel, but to be clear, in a few months there'll be a second chapter to this. So this is sort of like Act 1 of a new Head Lopper story, semi-annual adventure comic. This cover, by the way, is by Jim Rugg, so I had to pick that up. I'm still a fan of, and always will be a fan of Jim's. Head Lopper, at its most basic, is about Norgal, a barbarian who's just really good at lopping off heads, and he's going up against a bunch of good-for-nothing or evil demigods. That's his ongoing story. And there's this like degenerate witch, Agatha, that was once had her head lopped off, but a bunch of power got trapped in her head, and so she's still alive, and he carries her around. And over the years, he's gotten, so there's Head Lopper and Agatha. It's such a cool, fun art style. Over the years, he's acquired a few other allies. But this is why you get it. It's for the fun, crazy action and stuff. There he is fighting some goblins. There's scenes where he's fighting these lizard men. Just nice, big, clean lines. I think Andrew MacLean has a really cool style. I'm not an expert on this, but, I look at this, and to me, this looks like what I see for the style that's popular with, like, Cartoon Network shows. Maybe, or at least maybe was. Because I look at this, and to me, that looks like the commercials I see for, sorry, I haven't watched some of these shows, but like Steven Universe or kind of Adventure Time a little bit. So imagine that. He's got a very fun animated style. This thing moves at a great pace. It's barbarian adventure. Norgal himself is kind of a drunkard, and he's kind of always angry, but that's why it's kind of fun that he's got these allies that like sort of tolerate him, and he tolerates them. And I think he's kind of got a grudging respect and admiration for them, but he'd never be able to say that. It really was Agatha all along. Samurai Jack, sure, yeah. I think it's got something like that. But you'd never see that stuff get this violent, right? So it's a blast. It goes over the top in the best ways possible, as in it doesn't ignore the story and the characterization. It's got those foundational elements so that any over-the-top crazy action they do is still justified and moves a story forward. It's fun. It's really fun. And if you haven't read Head Lopper before, you can read any of the stories in and of themselves. You could read it in order, but it doesn't really matter. He's going on individual adventures, okay? It's part of a longer story, but it's all contained as well. I definitely give this 3 out of 3 thumbs. 3 out of 3 thumbs, folks. That's the best you can do. The other books I read, I just don't have as much to say about this week, so I'll just more go into recommend or don't recommend. Of course, I recommend Absolute Wonder Woman. I think Kelly Thompson and Hayden Sherman are doing some beautiful things with character and storytelling. It feels somewhat recognizable as Wonder Woman, but it also feels very new. And I like it. I read through this very, very quickly. So I do give this a recommendation, but I'm not going to go too deep into spoilers. I definitely think this is one of the best superhero books that's coming out monthly. So it's one of the best superhero books. I hadn't been planning on reading The Flash, I think I've said before, but I love what writer Ryan North has been doing on Fantastic Four, and I love Gavin Guidry's art. So this is the second issue, and I'm glad that they didn't reboot the numbering. They just went, yeah, we're just going to continue. It's about Wally West, and he's got to balance both being a family man with a problem that he can't solve purely with speed. Specifically, somebody is paying people to create videos of themselves doing something dangerous that the Flash will save them for. So he's keeping himself very busy patrolling his city, saving people jumping off buildings or standing in front of trains, just constantly. And he's like, don't do this, but they're motivated by money and stuff. What is it? So he has to do just clever things, right? Like at first people are just jumping off a building and he's running up and grabbing them. But then a bunch of people jump out further from the building, so he has to think of a new solution, and he grabs some big sheets and ties them and stitches them together and creates a net, just kind of funny, clever, outside the box thinking for how to represent super speed and what you can do with super speed. In this issue, Captain Cold, normally his enemy, jumps off a building to get his attention, and the Flash grabs him, but he's like in midair. So he like twirls his feet to try to create a vortex, like they're falling, but it's two heavy guys. So he slows down time. That's a thing he can basically do, or he speeds up his perception of time. And the second he touches the ground, he shoves them to the side and tries to redirect as much of their momentum as possible. It's just kind of a clever little thing. Anyway, really, really fun seeing Flash zip around and save people from being dumb. And there's the hints of a bigger plan. I think that this is a very fun and kind of funny superhero book. So it is a recommendation. Exquisite Corpses has gone back and forth for me because what we were kind of promised was that, there were going to be a bunch of serial killers up against each other, tournament style, fighting. And we sort of get that, but it's been stop and start pacing wise. I think some of that is because they're collaborating with a bunch of people. And so some issues have been really fun and given us crazy, scary scenes, and others have just felt like setup. But I will say, I think this is the second to last issue, and I do recommend this issue. It's got some gnarly violence and fighting. We are down to the final few people. We've got our supporting cast that we want to see survive. We'll see if they do. I do give this one a recommend. I'll just say that overall the series has been hit and miss for me. The colors popped on those pages. You talking about The Flash? Let's give a shout out to Adriano Lucas. Because if you're talking about that, I actually agree. You might have been talking about something else, but I do think that that's strong. Final issue of the Capes stories that were already printed as backups in Invincible getting reprinted with new revised artwork by Mark Englert. cool, funny story. Again, this is more Kirkman leaning into funny stuff. I liked it. I'm very excited, though, for next month, where there's going to be all new stories with these superheroes that work on, like for money. They punch in and punch out to work as superheroes. New stories starting next month with backup news stories by Cory Walker and Robert Kirkman. So I recommend, but I'm really looking forward to next month. Oh, this isn't the last thing I read. Oh, that's right. You guys know that I've got 2 cats, and Jack is especially rambunctious. Jack knocked over my stack of comics in the middle of the night that I keep beside my bed, because I usually read a lot of them as I fall asleep. And I realized just before I did the show, there are like 2 to 3 comics that must have fallen underneath my bed that I didn't grab. Sorry. He's such a rascal, but I can't get mad. Because I read Infernal Hulk. It's got a new artist. I want to say his name is Adam Gorham. Not quite like Nick Klein, but a lot closer than what Kev Walker was doing the previous 2 issues. I thought that the art was really pretty darn good. Story-wise, it's a pretty simple story. The latest issue of Infernal Hulk just has the Hulk is currently possessed by, we'll just simplify it and call it a demon, going up against Iron Man in new Hellbuster armor. And honestly getting pretty damn trashed. This Hulk is unstoppable. And I don't know how any of the superheroes right now are equipped to stop this version of the Hulk. It was good. It wasn't exceptional, but it was pretty good. I liked the art, and I thought that the story moved forward in an interesting direction. And it brings back the supporting character from the first arc of the Infernal Hulk story, Charlie Tidwell, who basically became a monster while trying to follow Hulk around as his sidekick. Not bad at all. But I'll tell you what I really recommend. I got the 3rd issue of The Brutal Dark, which is a noir meets action adventure pulp stuff. So it's like, what's a good noir movie? It's almost like, a Casablanca or a Maltese Falcon, maybe like Maltese Falcon mixed with Indiana Jones. It's damned good. Brutal Dark is awesome. Strong recommend. I give Brutal Dark a 3 out of 3. Interesting characters, great dialogue, cool mystery, cool villains, keeps introducing new elements that I find interesting and builds the world as compared to confusing it. Really, really good. Yes, we need Iron Jonah. That's what we need. Oh, that's cool to hear. That's cool. But I liked Adam. Adam was a good fill-in the same way that Danny Earls was a really good fill-in on the first arc for Hulk. Anyway, so those were good, but I really strongly recommend Brutal Dark. That gets a strong recommend. I would say I don't quite recommend this issue of Void Rivals if you haven't read it before. It's part 5 of 6 of the Quintesson War. It does have some stuff I like. I think that Andre Bresson is a really good fit for art in this. But the way Robert wrote some of the dialogue in this drove me a little nuts, because I feel like he's really pushing and stretching himself in Battle Beast. Okay, I'll give you an example. Pythona here was a villain in the animated G.I. Joe movie, and is now part of the extended Energon universe. She's this essentially like monster from an ancient civilization that won't use technology, right? She talks in a very formal way in the movie. Like her first line, I think, in the movie was like, Great Serpentor, when you were created, my face was etched into your soul. But here, she like bumps into like an ally and she says, you know what, Dracula? He's growing on me. I was like, what? That feels too informal to me. Whereas I felt like some other characters are in like a super emotional place. Like this warrior has been like losing a bunch of her comrades just now to various like Sharktacons and stuff like that. Okay, bad guys. And her ally Solila, who's a main character, is like, glad to see you among the living. How goes the battle? And she just answers in such a formal way that this doesn't strike me as somebody that's like scared or sad about like the people that she's lost and stuff. She's like, same as everywhere. Not well. We're hit with wave after wave of these monsters. I don't know how much longer we can hold them off. Now this is a very nitpicky type of concern, but like, I don't know how long we can hold them off. It just struck me as too formal, too detached for this moment. I was like, I think that this is somebody that even with their training as a soldier would be very emotional in this moment. Like we're losing or we're all going to die. Just something like kind of more emotional than just like, I don't know how long we can hold this up. It's not bad. It's just sort of even. And I'm like, So those were just sort of two moments in the dialogue where I felt like things felt a little bit flat for me. I don't mind this attack by the Quintessons and their monsters. Like that part's kind of interesting. It does end, though, with literally dialogue replicated from Transformers the movie. And I get that, like, Robert loves that, and I get that he is intentionally homaging that moment. But I still feel like there should have been a little more variation in the dialogue. Basically, one of the main characters, Derek, and his father are chained up in front of Quintessons, and they're getting judged. They say, before the esteemed tribunal delivers a verdict, would you like to beg for your lives? It sometimes helps, but not often. That was exactly what they said basically in the movie. And he's like, no. And then, the judge declares that they're innocent, but still throws them into the Sharktacon pit. The only thing I'll say is that I am curious after this cliffhanger for next issue, because these two sort of human type characters have nowhere near the strength and power of like Hot Rod and Cup. So I'm like, well, they're at a tremendous disadvantage getting thrown into a Sharktacon pit. So as a cliffhanger goes, I'm relatively interested to see where this goes. Yes, that repeated a moment from the movie, but they're much more underdogs. Anyway, I don't give it a strong recommend, but personally, I still like Void Rivals, and I will be excited to read the final bit of this chapter. But the books that I give a strong recommend to that came out this past week would be Headlopper, Corpse Knight, and The Brutal Dark, which I don't physically have in front of me because Jack knocked it under my bed and I forgot to grab it. Jack! I also started laying out a new piece of artwork that I wanted to ink tonight, and I forgot that was also on top of my comics. Jack knocked that under my bed. So I am sorry. I'm just going to go back to inking stuff that I already had here from last week while I talk to you about other stuff. Ooh, I always like answering questions. Let's see. Your favorite European crime films? You know what I like? And it's somewhat recent in a way, but the European version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I did like that. The original. I think 2 comics and 1 piece of art. Nice to see you, Gene. Jack is a rascal. He's really naughty. Not in an evil, super destructive way, just in a rascally way that it's tough to keep up with him sometimes. But I love the guy. I love him. Maybe I let him get away with too much. I don't know. Have I seen Riffy or Rififi? No, I don't know that one. Sorry. Oh yeah, the One Piece is under my bed. Gold D. Roger hit it there, and he said, "Whoever finds it gets to keep it." Both. An anniversary edition with back matter material and commentary by Morrison and Quitely, and a compact edition so that new people can affordably get it. Actually, I'm pretty sure We Three already is a compact edition. Your two new kitties wouldn't be that rascally? Well, I don't think Lily would be. It's really just Jack. I don't know what to say. My cat is really bad sometimes, but not in a mean-spirited way. He cracks me up. Jack cracks me up. He keeps our home interesting. So this past Friday, I did something new for myself. I went up to a town called Mill Creek. Just about an hour drive north of me, okay? Not too bad, an hour. And I hung out with Comic Tom Garcia from Comic Tom. Because he had gathered some donated comics and original art. And I also had original art donated by Andy Kuhn, who's usually here in the chat. And my friend West Coast Avengers gave me a piece that he had bought from an artist called Jeff Isherwood. And I sort of guest hosted with color commentary on one of Tom's Whatnot shows to raise funds for Chrissy and my repairs from the flood. Because I'm still doing so much fighting with the insurance company and contractors. It's not fun. It's honestly like it's good that like I've been able to raise a really healthy amount of funds. Some of this stuff has become more expensive than it originally was, but whatever. We'll deal with that. I just want to say it was really interesting to just sort of see sort of comic book content from such a different perspective, you know, like this claim sale and how Whatnot worked. But I'll tell you something, guys. Tom's operation is so impressive. And he's just like half my age, but he has built an amazing organization. He has this beautiful series of offices and warehouse, a really wonderful set of employees like Ryan I got to meet, and they just have quite the operation there. It's really impressive just how big it was, how clean and well organized it was. It really blew me away, like the scale of how many comics they move. Just incredible. Really fun. We had a good time. And one cool thing was like that was donated that I physically have just to give to someone else. This is an example of like the kind of thing that we had. This is cul-de-sac number 1, made by Bad Idea in cooperation with CGC. They've got a stake through this vampire cover. That this was like done by Hollywood prop makers. And my buddy Dave from West Coast Avengers won this auction. He is a massive fan of Jonathan Wayshak, the artist on this book. And so for him to own such a unique, cool piece, I'm so happy. And I'm going to hand that to him when we see each other on New Comic Book Day this week. But that was the kind of thing. We had that and a bunch of original art. It was really cool and really successful. Dude, Whatnot amazed me. And Tom gave away so many like graded Peach Momoko. He gave away like between 6 and 8 graded Peach Momoko books to people. Stuff that goes for a few hundred a piece. He gave away 6 or 8 of them. Just for watching the show, you can win that stuff. It was fun to see and learn. And so like we haven't started our repairs yet. The first guy that like gave us a quote seemed so together and good and everything, but he's totally ghosted us. Like he owes us a quote and he's not answering. So I guess I have to find or get a quote from like another person, which is just, okay, but a little annoying that we can't potentially judge if that first guy was going to be a good fit. We're just starting from scratch there. And then the first company that did all of the treatment for the mold and the demolition on our house and everything, they had it in writing that they would not charge me more. It might be less, but they wouldn't charge more for the piece that they did than $15,000. They put it in writing. And then they invoiced me for $24,000, and now I'm fighting with them, going like, "You guys have it in writing here that I was not going to pay more than $15,000. What's this $24,000?" And my insurance company, who is telling me that they would only give me $10,000 no matter what, and I have to do a $2,000 like what do you call it deductible anyway. They're going, well, if this came to us, just so you know, because I shared it with them, they said if this came to us, we would rewrite it and we would pay out $12,000. So I'm just like, it's just so slow and so much extra work than I anticipated. I thought that like, it would take long enough just to do all this treatment, but I didn't know I'd have to constantly be fighting like back and forth with every single company involved. And so it's just miserable, but whatever. I mean, whatever. I'm not here to complain the whole night. Just giving you a small update. But it was nice that like we were able to raise some funds and that Comic Tom got some donations. And I'm very excited to, at some point, get these repairs going. So yeah, I'm happy about that much. What else? Contractors are a burden. I always try to get 2 to 3 bids on any work, right? But sometimes it's super hard to get even one. And that's what I'm dealing with for just the rebuild. And I guess it's because when you like do this sort of like rebuild, most of the people that do it specialize in doing it and getting to charge insurance. I think what they want. So they don't really want to take it as just work for hire for some reason. They've just got a system set up. It's so frustrating. Yeah, congratulations on getting that piece. I think you got a great deal on that. I think you really did. Fair enough. You're right. You're probably right. Anyway, what else? So I knew it's going to take me a while right now to make my next Comic Tropes episode, which I'm very far along on doing an episode about Trad Moore. I'm also working on one about Sanford Green. And I'm also putting together a whole sort of like 4-part series on Batman artists that I really want to talk about. Jim Aparo, Norm Brayfogle, Alan Davis, and there was one more that's all of a sudden eluding me, but whatever, I'll come back to it. Bat Month. I'm going to do a 4-part Batman series. Anyway, since I knew that it was going to take me a while to do the next Comic Tropes, I said, you know what? I want to give people an episode in the meantime. So I went to an episode that I made for my patrons about Omaha the Cat Dancer, which is an adult soap opera type book. As in, it's a soap opera, and sometimes the characters have sex. And so it's for adults, but it's also done in what I would consider a tasteful, not like pornographic way. It's just done more matter of fact And it was it was a very influential book that changed the industry in a lot of ways. So I was really excited to go, you know what, this episode my patrons really seem to like. I'll just censor all the nudity and I'll release it to everyone else because my patrons have had it for several months. And it lasted about 10 hours before YouTube took it down for violating their guidelines. Even though it's like there's zero nudity, it's all censored. They say that, you know, it's meant to like stimulate people. And I'm like, but it's not. I'm talking about it in a very clinical manner. And I'm talking about like the history of the book and the artists and stuff like that. So I was really bummed out that I couldn't share that with everybody. It's not one that would be easy to fight, and I'm sorry. So if you want to see that, just so you know, you can either see it by becoming a Patreon supporter, or you can buy my exclusive posts one time. I think it's $3 to buy a one-time post, if I remember. That's the minimum you can set it at through Patreon. So I'd love to be able to share that 20-minute episode with all of you. YouTube says no because it's about sex. So I was really disappointed that I couldn't just share that with people. I thought that it had artistic merit to it. But YouTube disagreed, and you know, I can control my content to a degree, but the platform you use will dictate how far you can go there. And this is a case where YouTube just said no. So yeah, a lot of people did see it, and they said, you know, there's nothing that would be offensive about it, but you know, look, I know how YouTube works, and I'm okay with that. It's got automatic bots that crawl this stuff, and they catch it, and I could fight it, but I don't think this is a case worth fighting. I'll just get the next episode out to everybody, and if you really want it, like I say, I've got it on Patreon. And well, thank you, Mike, and I appreciate your support. I mean, $2 a month gets you access to the exclusive stuff. $5, you get your name in the credits, which, you know, or just, you know, allows you to know that you're supporting the show. So yeah, it's not like they even made it just to be clear, like unlisted. They literally deleted it. So, you know, I'd love to share it with you if I could, but no, I don't think so either. But I also don't think it's really worth fighting. And I do fight a lot of stuff, especially on this channel, because Jim and I, you know, review bad movies here. Almost every single movie that we review gets copyright claimed by some entity. And then you can dispute that. And that gives them 30 days to respond. Most of the time, if I dispute it, eventually they let me show our review. Sometimes they come back and they say, no. Then you can appeal that, and they have 7 days. But if you lose your appeal, you can get a copyright strike on your channel. If you get 3 of those, your channel goes away. However, I've always fought those, and thus far, knock on wood, we've always won. So I think we're in the clear. I don't think we use that much footage in our trash movie bonanza stuff. So I keep fighting it, but yeah. Oh yeah, like right now I'm still fighting 2 copyright claims. You can see that episode, but we don't get paid anything from ad revenue while this like movie studio fights it. A recommendation for Trash Movie Bonanza. Christopher, we've reviewed that one on Trash Movie Bonanza. We know Hausu. In fact, that one I specifically had to go back and re-edit to have a lot of still frames from the movie instead of the actual like video, because they kept disputing every edit that I made. But we did review that one. So I encourage you to go check it out. Question. I've been wanting to ask someone that was Patreon members in their end credits How many times do you have to edit the list to add and subtract names? Oh, fair enough. Every single episode, I start from scratch. However, it's not that difficult. Anytime I want to, I can download my active subscribers with filters. So, like, are they paying at a certain price point? Is it active? You know, good. And then I can download that as an Excel spreadsheet, just alphabetize it, copy it, paste it into my Adobe Premiere template. Don't worry about it, Christopher. Talking about Japanese horror about houses. Sweet Home. Oh, I don't think I know Sweet Home. Thanks for the recommendation. I'll try to remember that. What else? So that's happening with comic tropes. Saw a pretty cool movie the other day with my buddy. It's an American remake of a Swedish thriller. It's called Over Your Dead Body. This one was directed by Jorma Taccone from The Lonely Island. He's done movies like MacGruber, which I think is hilarious. Not everybody does, but I think is hilarious. What else? I liked it a lot. It is very violent, but I thought it was also super funny, the violence. So if you're not into gory stuff, you might not want to see it because there's a lot of fighting and a lot of people get hurt in really creative, gory ways. But my buddy and I laughed a lot. I don't know how well it will do, but I thought it was quite good. He did play Chaka on Land of the Lost. Let's see. Do you remember the Japanese monster movie Mutango, aka Attack of the Mushroom People? No, I don't. Huh. That's interesting. I'll try to remember that. KFBR 392, KFBR 392, KFBR 392. That's a pretty deep cut from MacGruber. I like MacGruber. Well, I don't like the character of MacGruber. He's horrible. But I do like the movies. They make me laugh. Oh, yeah, and that had, what's his name? Val Kilmer is the bad guy. He was very funny in that. And then he became friends with Will Forte and moved in with Forte for like a month or so. That's a hilarious story. If you haven't ever read it, like Will Forte wrote an article about what it was like to live with Val Kilmer as a roommate when he moved into Will Forte's house. Popstar is underrated. It was advertised as like a parody of like Justin Bieber or something, but it's not. It's like a parody of like the whole music industry. It's really, really funny. It's really good. What else? I know Invincible wrapped up its 4th season this week. I have not seen Invincible seasons 2 through 4 yet. And it's not for a lack of interest. I'm very interested. It's more just that I read the comics. It's a very loyal adaptation. And I'm just sort of like, I haven't been able to prioritize it. I do want to see it. A lot of my friends at work watch it and they're like, oh, this is so cool. This happened. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. So I can talk to them about it. But yeah, I haven't, I'm not up to date on the show. So sorry. I heard season 4 was really, really strong. I know that there was one episode that people didn't love, but like overall, I've also heard that it had some of the show's best episodes. So I definitely look forward to catching up on all of that at some point. Yeah, I've seen that House movie. I think it's fairly boring, but yeah, I'll consider it. I'll definitely still consider it. last episode was the last one for the season, I believe. Not like the last one. You're only about halfway through Invincible at this point, if that. Right around halfway. Right around halfway at this point with 4 seasons. Probably need about 4 more to tell the full story. But they've already renewed it for season 5, so I think that they're already hard at work. And I know some people complain a little about the animation. I get that because I've watched enough clips to get that. However, I think that they save some of that animation budget for when they've got like big fight scenes and stuff, and they've also got some really good animation, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot to recommend about Invincible. I think it has some. I think being basically the second draft of Invincible, that there are some small improvements on character arcs. When I talk to people about it, I'm like, oh, they did that. I'm like, okay, that to me sounds a little better. Anyway, there should be 4 to 5 seasons of Invincible. Well, there have been. Oh, you mean more, right, EJ? By the way, EJ's character, EJ co-created with Robert Tech Jacket, right? And Tech Jacket becomes a pretty important part of Invincible for a while. They switched the character's gender up, but I think that the version of Tech Jacket, from the bits that I've seen, I thought she seemed really cool. EJ, I still have something here. I can't show most of the stuff that I have from Robert, but I think this is okay to share. Robert used to share with me all of his pitches to Image. So some of them are like for versions of Walking Dead, like Dead Planet, that I can't show. Or there's a full comic that he wrote and drew about a pro wrestling organization, Between the Ropes. But yeah, this is some very early artwork by EJ, story by Robert, a pitch explaining what the book would be about and showing several interesting consecutive sequential pages so that the publisher could know what they're buying into. And this is stuff that was eventually published. But yeah, this is, if you ever want to see like a pitch, this is basically a version of what you would pitch. There's still a lot to tell. You don't even have this anymore? Oh, man. I bet Robert must still have a copy somewhere for you. Isn't that kind of cool, though, folks? I think that the logo changed, too, right? This was just like an early idea of a logo. And I mean, it really is beautiful, but it is funny, too. Like when I look at like Blood and Thunder or the upcoming the Pacific Rim comic books that EJ drew. Yeah, EJ's really evolved as an artist, too. He's got a way of texturing things. He's got a new way of laying things out and pacing storytelling. It's really interesting to go back in time and look at some of this stuff. I wish I could share with you guys some of the other stuff, but I've always told Robert I wouldn't. It wasn't my place to share that. Daredevil Born Again was great. I won't spoil anything there either, but there was, I thought, some pretty cool action. I'm enjoying that show quite a bit. It was fun to see, what do you call it, Jessica? The logo did change. Hopefully I bet Robert at least has the file that he could reprint. I bet you anything. He keeps that stuff. You should ask him. And then ask him if you can get a copy of Between the Ropes. I don't know if he even physically has that anymore. That I don't think he has as a file, but I don't know. Between the Ropes, folks, is a comic, like I say, that Robert both wrote and drew, and then self-printed. Like he went to maybe like a Kinko's or something and like printed it off and hand stapled it. Oh, I'd love to show you guys that one. It is crazy. See, that was before he did anything, before Battle Pope or anything. I'd love to show that. No, I don't think Marvel's ever done Predator versus Punisher. Not a bad idea. I like Jess's appearance. They also roll in some mythology from the comic books about Jessica. It makes me very curious to see what they do with her and extended Defenders characters in season 3. Already pretty interested in what that could be. Already pretty interested personally. What else was good? I'm seeing from some people that they feel that The Boys is trying to do too much, but I think it's really well paced. Personally, I'm excited. I was surprised with the latest episode. I'm not going to tell you what, but I had started to create a theory in my head of how it could line up very closely with the comics, and then in this episode, they just casually torpedoed that theory. So they're going in directions that I don't always see coming, and I kind of like that. So I'm enjoying The Boys a lot, but I also let myself enjoy adaptations in a way that I will sometimes be much more critical of if it was a comic. And that's like sort of a choice that I make to myself, that like I'm just going to watch and enjoy something, anyway. But yeah, I like The Boys. I think it's a really cool show. I think it's funny, but it just speaks to me. Empty Man, based on a comic book written by Cullen Bunn? Is it horror? I know Cullen just writes a lot of horror. I've read some of it, but I don't know Empty Man, actually. No, I don't know. I don't know Empty Man. Is it good or bad? Because we can talk about both here sometimes. I don't know if there's anything else media-wise or comic tropes-wise that I really have to talk about. I'm trying to think. Do I have any notes? Talked about where my fundraisers, or like how it's going there. It's going well. Talked about the pulled comic tropes episode. Talked about what I've seen and done aside from comics. Yeah, Wally, you've posted the same thing like 20 times. I see it. Let's see. Did you mention that there is a Junji Ito live-action adaptation coming out? I seem to recall talking about that in the news quite a while back. I watched half of the season and I was like, this is really good. But you know what? I like the comic more. I don't think it was a bad adaptation at all. And I'm really glad that Eternaut got in front of more people. I think it's a really important, really well done comic. Gavin, had some fun earlier tonight talking about your latest issue of Flash. Since you're here, let me pull it again. And someone was complimenting how well the colors complemented your work. I loved some of the different ways you interpreted the speed. I'm trying to think of like what. Oh, I know. Yeah. Just talking about his slowing down his perception of time so that he could like push himself with friction against like landing hard, his twirling legs. I don't know. There's a lot of choices that you're making in terms of how to represent somebody moving at super speed. I love this one of like him running back and forth and grabbing all the people that were at a party and then just showing the cups falling in midair. That's really cool, man. It's clever. Clever. I guess I thought the Eternaut was reprinted this past year, wasn't it? It's Fantagraphics. I thought that it was reprinted. I have a copy, so I didn't keep up to date on that. Let's see. If I remember correctly, Empty Man was the last movie officially released by Fox prior to the Disney acquisition. Yeah, I never heard about that one. Huh. I thought that they reprinted it. I mean, why wouldn't they with the show coming out? I don't know if it's the same fantastic bookcase edition that they did that I got, but it's really good. My pen is dying, so I think I'm done inking. But I'll find the piece that I was like kind of happy with that I was starting to sketch out for next week. I've got a pretty. I think I've got a cool layout for like a potential like supernatural cover. But we'll I'll work on sketching that out and inking that next week instead. Yeah, I guess this has gone on pretty long. We're coming in right up on 3 hours, but there was a lot of news to talk about this week. To summarize, I rest in peace, absolutely, to Gerry Conway, really influential writer, really fun writer a lot of times. Created so many great characters that will continue to live on, and wrote a lot of TV as well. Definitely check him out. But yeah, he really is the guy that started the Bronze Age of comics. And then for comics that came out this week, again, just because not all of you have heard about it. So for new books, really look for Head Lopper and Corpse Knight. They're both, look, I guess there's some similarities there in terms of like, a violent sort of knight or barbarian type guy. But yeah, really, really good stuff. I had a great time tonight, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. This means a lot. I keep making that sound in between my thoughts. Really, really good hosting. We'll see. But I am hard at work on creating some more comic tropes for you. So I guess I'm going to get back to that. And this week is a free comic book day / comics giveaway day. Anybody out there real quick got plans to go to one or more comic book shops? I would love to really quickly hear if any of you have any specific plans. I think I'm scheduled to work, so I don't think I'll get to enjoy free comic book day this year. I don't think so. But there's some good books out there. I'll tell you that the one that I think always is the best free comic book day book is always the Energon Universe special that Skybound releases, because it's a new original story. It's not just a teaser or some pages from something that Marvel or DC has coming up. I think it's a really good book. You should definitely look for that, the Energon Universe special. That's always, in my opinion, one of the best. Thank you all for the compliments. I'm glad you enjoyed the show. That means a lot. Thanks for the stream. You stayed for basically the whole time. Your kitchen has no floor. Well, my basement has no floor. My basement has no walls. My basement has no working plumbing. Oh, my God. We'll get it done. I'm going to be at work until 10 a.m. on Saturday, so I won't be free comic book day. You won't be doing it. Well, I hope some of you get to do it, and I hope your store does something special, a sale or a giveaway, something like that. I have no basement. Well, I should have a basement. That's the difference. So it's half my house that's just missing. Gavin is quietly here, accepting any and all compliments. No, Gavin's doing some really great work on Flash, folks. He's a great guy. He gave me a very healthy donation towards rebuilding too. So super nice guy. Lucky to know him. All right. I think that sounds like it. The show. I think I'll put in some chapter breaks. But folks, let me give you some cool lo-fi music to just sort of vibe out to as we call it a night. Tell you what, double salute. Keep reading comics. Take care.